Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. Welcome to Friday night's video in our second Master Series. I do believe this is the 92nd video in our second or the 91st video in our second Master Series, the 40th video in our basic processors, the third video in sculpting processors, and in this video we're going to talk about issues when applying these concepts that we're going to be talking about in the sculpting processors. This is a very simple concept, so I'm not going to make a really long video about this because, you know, the basic issues are pretty simple. You know, whether or not we're dealing with, like, if we just have noise here, any type of a noise, no matter what we've done with it, or we're dealing with saturation, full spectrum, any type of harmonics or distortion or anything like that, that we have a couple issues that are going to happen. And the problem with this is that, you know, we have to really think about it, and no matter which situation, that we can be muddying the mix. Does that make sense? And causing mud, with whether or not we're talking about noise or saturation or distortion or adjusting harmonic content, it can be muddying the mix. So, I mean, it's a really simple concept to understand. Each one of those can be doing that. And to understand that reverb can multiply us. It's a problem that the processing that you do here, you have to remember that when you're doing spatialization, that like a convolution reverb or reverberation of any type, more than likely is going to multiply it. So you have to really take that into consideration because it can cause you to come out with a muddy mess also. And we're talking about discoloring. You know, discoloring the sound and coming out with a sound you don't want because of lack of practice, becoming that next level master audio engineer and getting frustrated with the tools because you're not taking the time and understanding each one of them is an aspect of sound that you are really, and the work that you're doing with them is very delicate and sometimes very finite, very minuscule and very detailed type of work that, you know, you not spending the time to deal with it correctly and use it properly, that you end up discoloring the sound and making something you don't want, where you actually are just not spending the time working with it well, or choosing the right noise, or choosing the saturation you need. You know, it can very, very simple as that, you know, the saturation is fine, but you need to low pass the saturation and, you know, to get it to cleaned up or put it on a different channel, mix it in there a little bit. Different ways of doing it to get the type of saturation you want, the type of noise you want, it equalizes the way you want, on and on and on. The harmonic content, you have added the wrong harmonic content, or too much of it, or not enough of it, or in the wrong areas, and it's discoloring the sound instead of texturing and color the sound the way you want, or repairing things, you know, like we've talked about. So, and there's another thing that it can just be multiplying the problems that you already have. It can make the problems you have worse, to where if you've got too much white and pink noise in there, that's like you're thinking it's way too much analog warmth going on, and so you're adding more white and pink noise to it, you're making the problem worse. Or a certain type of saturation or distortion or harmonic content, you have to really keep in mind that you might be making the problem worse also, to where it's like you had quite a bit of analog warmth on there, but it was a little hissy, and so you're trying to tone it down with like a brown wave, brown noise, or a gray noise, that it's going to kind of smooth it out a little bit, but you're putting more pink and white noise on it and making the whole problem worse. That's just one example, but you can. So you really need to sit down and think about what you're doing and how you're applying it. You know, if you look at like noise here, that this noise here, it's like, you know, it's been equalized. It's all over the place, and there's saturation in there and some distortion. This being added into a track might, or a mix, might be wonderful, but it also might cause a mess. So if you know, it's very light work a lot of times and very delicate work that you do. It's, you know, very minimal, and sometimes you have to really understand that any one of these components can make a real mess of your mix really fast, and utilizing them is going to take you becoming a next level master audio engineer and really practice utilizing them. Which aspects of them sound good in different situations or different instruments, and what things work to help clean things up, smooth things out, roughen things up, to get done what you're trying to do. That we'll talk about a lot more, but all this stuff is for years. Audio engineers have been trying to get rid of this stuff, not add it to stuff. So you having the concept of taking that whole mentality and reversing it to where, no, these can be wonderful tools that can enhance, because all sound are these things that I'm removing. So I can also use them to enhance the sound. It's a huge, most fundamental sound sculpting tools you have. Even something simple like this is a program called Spear, and you're looking through here, there's harmonic distortion in here, noise between the harmonics that are happening here, and loud harmonic distortion here in some spots. This isn't like looking at RX6, this is a real simple example. And in the low end, you can see lots. It's interpreting noise, saturation, distortions, all kinds of stuff between these harmonics that may or may not be good. Does that make sense? Just because it's not, there's no way by looking at it to say that's good or not. You have to start formulating a decision about what you're adding in there, and very specific about what you're adding in there. So you end up going, oh, what's that? I don't know, it could be bad, might be good, I don't know, I don't know. Does that make sense? Instead, hyper clean stuff, then you know what is going on when you add stuff, but most things you have aren't totally hyper clean. It's just not. Most things inherently have saturation, noise, distortion, harmonic. There's no way around it. So, it can be inherently in everything, and picking and choosing what's going to be there is the concept, because you have a sound here, and you've got noise, saturation, and distortion all over inside of this, like, say, this vocal with this harmonic content mapped out. There's saturation and noise and distortion all over this sound. Now, whether or not which of it is what you can add to it to make it pleasing is you becoming that next level master audio engineer, so that you don't cause issues. Because every one of the things we talk about, noise, saturation, distortion, adjusting, adding harmonic content, trying to attenuate harmonic content, can be an issue and make it worse. So it's just something to really be able to utilize, sculpting processors and the things we're talking about. You really have to let it sink in how detrimental the things we're talking about can be to your mix. And if you don't really practice using them and master using them, that it can be very frustrating, and it can very rapidly turn your entire mix into a mess, and to where you'll get frustrated and not want to utilize any of these applications, processors, or tools, because you're not being able to master them. So really get it in your head that to becoming this next level master audio engineer, you are really have to sit down and think about how you're applying these things, so that they don't cause you issues. Anytime you add any of them, it's going to change the sound, and you have to be very specific about what you're adding, how it's changing the sound. Really hone your listening skills, really hone your opinion of what sounds good to you, really be able to listen to really low-level differences of things that are happening, because a lot of this stuff that, it's very minuscule. Sometimes it's back a little bit in the mix, in the supportive tracks, in the harmonies below the main vocals, that you really have to sit down and listen really finely. And then when you start mixing, have to really listen to if it's helping or it's not. Can be very, a problem because you have to walk away, come back with fresh airs, listen, go back, adjust things, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and then another step forward, 2 steps back, and that kind of thing to really master these tools, which if you're going to be that next level master audio engineer, these are going to be some huge tools for you to master, because you can take stuff, whether it's inexpensive equipment or it's a capture that's not shining like a star or whatever, that you can fix it and you can enhance it and you can make it better. You know, I mean, even on some vocal I've talked about, I've got this R&B vocal is just too low and there's just too much bass going on. And I've added a little bit of blue noise in there because it's having a different frequency effect on the saturation noise and the overall texture. Then it's different than equalization, and it would add just a little bit and be like, oh yeah, that's beautiful, oh yeah, dude, I'm just so, oh yeah, you know. And it does, it can do that, but can also make a complete mess out of your mix if you use it improperly. And the issues that it's going to cause are going to be issues applied by you. We're not talking about filtering or cleaning things up in this segment. We're talking about adding these things. So the only way that it's going to be an issue is because of you adding the issue. So any one of them can be an issue and cause you problems. And it's, you know, one of those things that you really need to analyze what you put in, really work on your acute listening, and really get your mind set that it's really super detailed, fine detailed work that you're doing, very delicate work sometimes. That sometimes you've worked on all these things and it just took just a tad of brown noise that kind of mellowed out the saturation you put in there, and you add a little bit of upper end harmonics on there, and then a little bit of brown noise in the lower end just kind of leveled it out a little bit, and oh yeah, dude. And I know that sounds funny, but that is the process we're talking about, and it can be like that. And then you're going back and forth through it, trying to minutely adjust them until it's just like, yeah, that's perfect. Putting on your headphones, oh yeah, dude. You know, it's like, I know it sounds funny, but you know, that is part of it, because you can just make things beautiful. You've got these fundamental things you're working with in a sound, even a transducer or a vocal, that you can enhance to make different, to make better. And you can change those inherent components by adding other things in there. Does that make sense? That you might not be able to get all the upper end noise out of this by adding some lower noise in there, is like some brown noise, you're, you know, shifting the balance towards noise in the lower end, trying to eliminate the sound of noise in the upper end that you can't get to. You know, you can get to it somewhat in something like RX6, but you might not be able to eliminate it all. And something like that's very detailed work. I mean, even that concept of trying to compensate for that or adjust for that by, you know, masking the other noise with lower end brown noise, those kind of concepts go on and on and on. And you really need to think about that, because any one of those concepts can cause huge issues. Does that make sense? By doing them improperly and not really taking your time to do a really good job, that all the things we're talking about can all be an issue, but the issue is going to be applied by you more times than not. Most of these things, about the only things that will happen, you can get intermodulation distortion. I don't worry about that too much. Sometimes harmonics can interact with each other badly, but it's normally fairly audible and a very low level, and you're able to catch it with taking your time. So most of the issues that are inherent, you know, you might end up with noise in the lower end or the upper end that you might have to high and low pass filter after you get done work on your stuff. That, you know, those are simple things, but most other things are issues you're going to cause by applying it, and need to understand that you may be causing the problem because you're the one applying these things. And take your time and work at being that next level master audio engineer with these tools, so that you don't cause your production issues with these tools. Peace, hope, love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.